Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just broke down what does Florida State do from here? How do they kind of rebound from what was a just terrible performance on Saturday and find their way into the playoff, which is exactly where they want to be? It's definitely still possible, but a lot of things to figure out in Tallahassee before that game in a week now against Boston College. But let's get into the rest of week one. There were a couple of big time comebacks in the rest of week one where I know a lot of people were tuned into Georgia Tech, Florida State, and that was about it. The rest of it did not disappoint by any means. So I want to jump into this a little bit, and we'll start with the other ACC team that played on Saturday. SMU snuck out a win over Nevada 29-24. This one was very, very close. Nevada stuck in this game for a lot longer than a lot of people thought they were going to, and I think the biggest thing here was, or I'll get to the biggest thing here in a second, but SMU outscored them 16-0 in the fourth quarter, came back from 11 down to win this one. Preston Stone and RJ Maryland just took over towards the end of this game, but one of the biggest takeaways that you have to have coming out is this two-quarterback system for SMU is just not going to work. It was for the first half of that game, for the first three quarters of that game in a lot of different ways. It was basically they had two quarterbacks, but they had zero at the same time. And it wasn't that Kevin Jennings came in and played pretty good football during the time that he was in, but Preston Stone had no ability to get into a rhythm. He started incredibly slow. In fact, I think his first throw was a pick, but at the end of the day, he was really, really bad in the first half. And then he found his way back in the second half where they just played him all the way throughout. And I think that's going to be the thing that you have to watch throughout this the rest of the schedule is SMU has two really talented quarterbacks. The thing is, it doesn't mean that both of them can win the game for you. It doesn't mean that both of them can absolutely put on a show throughout the entire game where they're getting in and out and they're being dropped in and dropped out all the time and no one really gets into a rhythm for the game. So that's something they're definitely going to have to figure out one way or the other. On the Nevada side, Brendan Lewis was very, very impressive. He was one of those guys that when they needed a play, he made it 9 times out of 10. He made so many third down conversions with his legs, and we'll actually get into him in the next segment here. But a very, very talented player and one that gives Nevada just a little bit more than some people might have thought they had going into this year. But getting back to Preston Stone, the first half, 3 for 10, 41 yards, 0 touchdowns, and a pick. The second half, 14 for 20, 213, a touchdown, and no picks. And frankly, a lot of that came in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, this guy answered the bell. He did the thing that you needed him to do down the stretch of this game. And I think you move forward with him. And SMU, frankly, kept Nevada in this game for a lot longer than they should have been because they had 11 penalties, 125 yards of penalties. So SMU's got plenty of stuff to figure out. It's not just the quarterback position that is an issue in this game, but at the end of the day, it was an issue. It was something that they have to figure out, and I tend to believe that you just roll with Preston Stone going forward and you let Kevin Jennings, be the starter full-time next season. If that'll work, you'll find out. But at the end of the day, the two-quarterback system was just not working for this team by any means. So they had to figure out a way to fix it. But SMU did avoid a disaster here. Definitely could have been a really, really bad start to a season that they feel like they might be able to compete for the ACC in. So they got to figure out the quarterback position. They got to clean up a number of things, including the penalties. But schedule is plenty attackable, and they absolutely are still a dangerous team this upcoming year. But if they had lost this game, maybe they weren't. So definitely a huge win for SMU, and they keep moving forward. Moving forward to Montana State against New Mexico, we got another comeback here. Montana State was playing a very gross game of football, honestly, for the first parts of this game, and Devon Dampier really took over, and we'll talk about him actually in the next segment as well. But this was really, really impressive. Outscored New Mexico 21-0 in the fourth quarter and flipped this game on its head in a hurry. And there were a couple of big-time plays, including a remarkable 93-yard touchdown run from Adam Jones with about 4 minutes left in the game to just make this one a game. There was a lot that Montana State had to go right in that last little bit, and that 93-yard touchdown run gave them a lot of leeway. So a huge, huge play there. But one of the big-time plays that came out of this game was Devon Dampier taking a kind of naked bootleg, a very interesting play action that was just downright beautiful, 24 yards for a touchdown, and I believe he was laughing on the way into the score. So a very, very talented player, one of those guys that He's at New Mexico. I understand he's not going to get the most publicity in the world, but this is a guy worth watching. I promise you that. Throughout the season, he's going to make some really, really fun plays, and that was just one of them. So now for Montana State, really, really incredible way to sustain a punch at an FBS arena and get a win as an FCS team. So really, really impressed with this team. I knew they were a very talented team, so wasn't super worried about that. But Tommy Malote lost 2 fumbles early on or not early on in this game. He lost one on the very first drive and then one on the very first drive of the second half. They were both taken back for touchdowns. So he put them in a little bit of a hole. Now, he did answer the bell in a ton of different ways, and the running backs answered the bell in a ton of different ways, which I'll actually get to in the next segment. But they ran for over 350 yards on the ground. Both running backs had over 100 yards. They averaged 7.7 yards per carry for Montana State. So a lot of things went right on the ground, and Tommy Malote made the requisite amount of plays to win this game. So New Mexico was up 17-0. They were up 31-14 after halftime, and they fell. And it's going to be a relatively tough season for the Lobos, if I had to imagine. Hopefully it won't be 0-12, but they had a win total of 2 going into the season, and it started off on the wrong foot. So it'll be an interesting thing to watch as we continue on with this season. Definitely a really interesting team, and a team that I think is a little bit more dangerous than some people give him credit for, but overall, a tough loss to take. But overall, the Mountain West teams, New Mexico as well as Nevada, played a little bit better football than you thought. So maybe that Mountain West conference is going to be a little bit more competitive than we once thought it was going to be. Moving on to Hawaii, they got a little bit more of a straightforward win, but Delaware State did tie this one at 14, I believe early in the fourth quarter, or early in the second half, excuse me. So definitely a really, really interesting game, but at the end of the day, Hawaii answered right back and never looked back. They scored the final 21 points of this game, 135-14. Braden Schrager, the quarterback for Hawaii, was not as clean as you want him to be in this game. Definitely something that he's going to have to continue forward with, and overall, props to Delaware State for keeping this one close. They missed their 10.5-hour flight, had to travel over the next day, and all of the stuff that were stacked against them. It's pretty incredible that they were able to keep this one close, and a huge props to that coaching staff and that team over there. And I did want to give a little bit of love to the FCS because this is likely the last time that I'm going to be able to give love to the FCS this year, so Tarleton State got a big-time win over McNeese State 26-23. This was a really, really fun game, and it was dominated by Kevon Britton. He had 25 carries, 164 yards, didn't get into this touchdown, but man, did he keep this offense running for a huge part of this game. So huge shout-out to him and Tarleton State for starting their season off with a win. Southeast Missouri State got a big-time win in a little bit of a battle for FCS. They get a little trophy for this game to kick off the season, so they won this one pretty dominating fashion, 37-15 over North Alabama, and the player of the game was another running back. Peyton Brown made a number of plays in this game, including 3 touchdowns, but he had 19 carries, 97 yards, 3 touchdowns, did exactly what you need him to do if you're Southeast Missouri. And then moving on to our final one, it was the SWAC against the MEAC, the incredible HBCU battle that we get every year on week 0. Florida A&M escaped this one. Norfolk State almost came back and won this one for them, but Florida A&M was able to get out with a win, and their quarterback, Daniel Richardson, put on a show. 22 for 30 throughout this game, 286, 3 touchdowns, did exactly what they need him to do, and that's a really special player that is going to be a lot of fun to watch down there in, I believe, in the SWAC. I'm 90% sure, yes, the SWAC. But very, very fun player to watch, and definitely a team that is going to have plenty to say in the HBCU championship this upcoming year. So it was a crazy week 0. You know, everyone talks about how week 0 is just, I think the best analogy I heard was they give you just enough water to remind you that you're thirsty. Well, now we're on to week 1, and a lot of big-time things happening this upcoming week, but they gave us plenty of water this weekend because that Georgia Tech game was incredible. We had 2 incredible comebacks with SMU and Montana State coming back from 11 and 17 down, and there were a couple other games that gave us just enough to keep us going, but we're about to get into the thick of it. Now, we will unpack week 1 or week 0 just a little bit further on this next segment. I want to give out the players of the week. We'll likely do this pretty much every week throughout the season. This one obviously will have a little bit more around one game than it will going forward, but I want to break down and highlight the players of the week for this week right after this, so stick with us.